Saturday, kids. What time is that?
Hey everybody, Keith here from GeekTime TV with a special video for you. Joining me for an exclusive interview is Tom Shillue, writer and comedian from the #1 late-night talk show Gutfeld on Fox News. We're going to discuss Tom's journey from The Daily Show to Gutfeld and everything in between. So without further ado, Tom Shillue. Hey Tom, how are you? Thanks for joining here on GeekTime TV, our little tiny upstart YouTube channel, and you found it.
Yeah, I think, I saw you on there. I don't know what it was that brought us together. You either liked a tweet or maybe retweeted something. And then I went onto your YouTube and I watched your, I guess you became a real estate agent. You were trying to sell the Brady Bunch house.
Or raise money to buy it myself.
Exactly. And then I just sent you a message. And so we kind of lined this up. And I didn't even know that you had seen the Gutfeld show a few times. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I've been down to the tapings and I watch as much as I can. I think you had made a really, you were one of the panelists.
When you saw the show live?
No, not recently.
Yeah.
Like the day I connected with you on Twitter.
Yeah.
And you made this really, really salient point and I loved it. And I went and found it that you had tweeted it. And I think I retweeted and quote tweeted
I
it.
see.
And
that's good.
Yeah. And then you immediately followed me back and I was like, that's cool. And then you sent me a message, which was even cooler. So here we are.
That's great.
How was your Father's Day, by the way?
Father's Day was great. And I have, I'm the author of Mean Dads for a Better America. I guess I have a copy of it right here on my desk. I actually have a whole box full of these because I thought I would sell them at shows. And I do sell them at shows, but it's hard to carry around 300 books when you go on a date. So anyway, I'm slowly selling my own books, but I talk a lot about my dad in my show. I have a new solo show that's largely about my dad and my mom. And so, we like Father's Day around here. I have 2 daughters.
Oh, that's awesome. I have one. She's in the other room now on YouTube. Who knows what she's watching while I'm away.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll do this getting to know you thing. I'll back up and I'm looking at your credentials here, your list of appearances and whatnot, and you've got quite a eclectic mix here.
It is eclectic, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of, that's one thing you can say for it. When I used to do the radio show on Fox News Radio, I had as my intro the intro that Stephen Colbert did for me when I was on Colbert Report, when the Mean Dads for a Better America came out. I was kind of doing as many media appearances as I could, and I did late show with Stephen Colbert. And he said, my next guest is the only host to ever have been a correspondent on The Daily Show and a host on Fox News. And the audience laughed like it was a joke because they thought, well, that can't be true. But of course it was true. So that's really if I have any unique selling point, it's that I've been in both of those worlds. I was on Comedy Central for years, right, and I was on The Daily Show with Craig Kilborn. And then I actually was one of the few people who went over the hump from Craig Kilborn to Jon Stewart, and Stephen Colbert was one of the other guys. So I kind of worked with him. I wasn't kind of, arm in arm with him because he was doing a correspondent and I had my own, what they call a third act segment on the show. It was called This Week in Hate, where I would review the latest in racist websites.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. And when I brought that up on Colbert, he said, oh, you were on The Daily Show the same time as me. And then I mentioned the This Week in Hate with the racist websites. And then when I saw the show that night at 11:30, they had cut that out. I guess they didn't want to. Oh, I don't know what it was, but, it was part of the show. We made fun of racist websites. Some people didn't understand the segment. And I think John never really got it. Like he knew what we were doing, but I don't think Jon Stewart liked that we were kind of making light of racism, even though it was the racists we were making fun of. I think the idea of making jokes about it was a little too much for John. And they ended up canceling my segment after Columbine. Remember the Columbine massacre? Yeah. Right. So that was the incident that it's hard to think now when we're kind of in this, like we're kind of inured to school shootings. But at the time, that school shooting was so so out there that it kind of was one of those moments that changed things, and people took shows off the air, and they took
Right.
my segment off because it was like, it wasn't really about school shooters or anything, but the idea that you'd be laughing at racists, I guess, was out of bounds.
Wow. It's kind of funny, and we'll circle back in a second, but while we're on the topic of this, now it's like people with common sense are labeled that. So you can, in a way, maybe bring that back.
Yeah.
In a more of a parody of itself. You know what I mean?
That would be
Like
funny. The idea now, because at the time I was doing like the Alabama Knights of Knights of Freedom, they call themselves, or it was like a clan group, right? They had local websites for their clan groups. And this was, of course, back in the late 90s when your websites were made with GeoCities and stuff. And so the racist websites were even sillier with the kind of cut and paste graphics that were on the early web,
lightning bolts and storm clouds and whatnot.
Exactly. And so I was kind of poking fun of the idea that even though they have a logo and, maybe there's a swastika on their site, or maybe there's a guy in robes or whatever, one of the standard jokes was always like, oh, these are the Knights of Freedom. In other words, 3 lonely guys with a modem. You know what I mean? So because the idea was always racism is these guys who are, part of whatever white supremacist movement they're from, they're acting like they're this big movement, but they're not a big movement. It's a couple of idiots. You know what I mean? And so I would do I also did the black hate group. There's the black Israelites who would hang out in Times Square, and I would do all the different extremist groups. And I think that was another thing that John didn't really cotton to. He wanted to keep it just white supremacy. He wanted to make fun of just that. But if we were to do it today, I think funnier would be something like, This Week in Hate. Look at this virulent racist. And then we would do a rundown of like Jordan Peterson or
Yes.
Charlie Kirk.
Exactly. I mean, how many times I've been called an ist lately just for not liking a movie? I mean, it's insane.
I think just that Superman shirt will get you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is definitely white power right here. Yeah. So, as part of the whole idea that you started out on that, I guess if you would call it that side, are you apolitical? Are you a disaffected liberal? What would you classify yourself?
Well, no, I wasn't always, I was liberal in high school. And in the book, actually, in the first chapter of my book, I go back to my writings from my high school diary when I talk about being a liberal. I'm a liberal left winger, and I believe that Walter Mondale has the right idea for America, or whatever I was writing in my diary, But of course, that's the way a lot of people are in high school. They're
Sure.
liberal. And I was convinced that Reagan was going to get us in a nuclear war or something like that. In college, I became more conservative. I read stuff like Milton Friedman, and I started, getting into the libertarian think tanks and things like that. So I became conservative pretty early on, say in college. Then I moved to New York. I'm trying to break into show business. And I wasn't really, my act was not political. My stand-up act was about myself because I love telling stories. I grew up with, as an indicator to some people who are too young to remember these comics, Bob Newhart, Carol Burnett, Woody Allen, and Bill Cosby. Those were kind of, the comics that I used to go to the library and listen to Bill Cosby albums,
Right.
Because it was anything that was clean, because we couldn't have dirty albums. I wasn't going to be able to listen to George Carlin in my, on my dad's phonograph,
Right.
So it was basically anything that was clean. And I remember getting the Steve Martin's comedy album, Comedy Isn't Pretty. And it had a warning on it. And my sister gave it to me for Christmas. And she said, don't show that to Dad because he'll take it away. So I would kind of just listen to it in my room,
Right. Yeah. I remember a friend of mine got Richard Pryor right around the time I was 10 or 11.
Yeah.
His parents had no idea. And we were like, holy cow,
Yeah. We saw the Richard Pryor movie in high school, probably a little bit later, after he had lit himself on fire and,
Okay. Right.
And then he did that special in the red suit, and we went to see it in the drive-in. I mean, these are like things nobody does anymore. But we went to the drive-in and watched that movie. And I remember thinking, well, I bet my parents wouldn't want me to see this,
Right. Yeah. So you were doing those kind of comedy stand-up specials, and then you ended up somehow um in hit Fox.
Yeah, I mean, it went so I get to New York in the early '90s. I started stand-up with guys like Jim
Oh,
Gaffigan
cool.
and, Greg
You're still
Giraldo.
out with him, right?
Um,
Gaffigan?
no,
Okay.
I toured with him for several years, but then once I got hired by Fox, I stopped working with Gaffigan because the schedule with him was pretty intense. So I basically, when I got Red Eye, I had to give up on the Gaffigan. I did a few other gigs with him after that, but basically that was the end of the Gaffigan career. But
Okay.
we used to spend a lot of time on the road, like touring all around the country together and playing these great big theaters. And now when I go out with Greg Gutfeld, we play a lot of the same venues that I used to play with Jim.
Okay.
So it's similar. We were at the Fox Theater this past weekend in Atlanta, and I was like, "Oh, I remember this place, the same dressing room." And I come out on the stage, and it's all very familiar. But I get to New York in the early '90s. I came by way of Orlando, Florida. I was in Massachusetts. I started doing a little bit of comedy, a little improv, and then I got a job at Universal Studios in Florida. And I'm down there at the grand opening, which was 1990, 1991. And I was working with guys like Wayne Brady
Oh,
down there, and a guy named Asif Manvi. He's an actor that
yep.
you might know, Asif Manvi.
Yeah.
So we were
He's
all
also on
working
Daily Show.
the
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
he was
was.
on the Daily
Yeah.
Show years after me. It's funny because I was on the Daily Show and then I left there, and then some years later, Asif gets hired, and he actually he's much more well known than I was for the Daily Show because by the time he got on the show, it was much more successful. It was the Jon Stewart years.
Yeah.
But I'm in Florida with those guys and a bunch of other people that are a lot of talented people down there, and they all either went to New York or LA. And me and Asif moved to New York at the same time. Asif was doing theater, and I was starting to do stand up. And I met Jim Gaffigan at my first open mic night, and we would, we just tried to break in. So basically, we're talking about like 1991 through 2000. I'm just breaking into the business, trying to break in any way I can, trying to get my stand up on TV. I did a Comedy Central thing in the mid 90s, just a little, segment that I did for Comedy Central. I ended up getting Conan O'Brien in 99, and that was my first big TV spot. And then all the while I'm doing commercials and voiceover. So I'm making a living doing what a lot of guys do, advertising,
Right.
and that was pretty good because it's good gigs. You go in there, you get I was auditioning every day for commercials and voiceovers, and then every couple of months I would get something, and you kind of piece together a career that way. You're making a couple of $100 on the weekend playing at a comedy club in Parsippany, in New Jersey, and then you might get a voiceover and you make a couple of $100. Then you might get an on-camera commercial that ends up making you $22,000, and then you paid your rent for the year.
Right.
So I did that for that basic decade, which when I look back at the 90s, it just seemed like it went on forever, And then I'm in the business now. I'm on Comedy Central. I'm on the Daily Show in the late 90s. I'm kind of making a good living combining things, live shows and advertising and things like that. And then I get Conan, Comedy Central. I shot a Comedy Central special in 2003. And now my career is kind of there. I'm not a celebrity, but I'm making a living. I'm kind of like a blue collar comedian. And then Jim had already taken off. Like Jim and I, who were really had started together, he was always a little bit ahead of me. Like he did his half-hour special, in the late 90s, when I had just gotten Conan. So Jim was always like that, my kind of barometer for like, oh, I got to get where Jim is, and then I got married in 2003. Then Jim was touring. I never wanted to open for Jim because he was my buddy. We did a show together and we were kind of peers. And it's like, oh, am I going to be an opening act for my whole life? No, but I'll do it for 5 years, So I spent 5 years on the road making good money because Jim's making big money now. And so, the paycheck was good. It was solid work. I would take my wife and kids. I had 2 daughters. So we had like 2006, 2009. So we're getting babies now. Jim's having kids. So we would get in the tour bus and we'd go on the road, and we would, stop at the Holiday Inn and we'd all swim in the pool together. It was like super fun, touring, clean comedy, good audiences, seeing the country. It was like the old fashioned way of entertainment,
Right.
And then all in there. I'm right wing, but nobody knows it because, it's why come out as a Republican when everyone in the business is liberal and you can just keep your head down and just do showbiz, right?
Right.
But it would work into my act a little bit. I would have a little bit of, conservative bits, and when I was out in the heartland in the red states, I would kind of, you could see audiences like, oh, I see this guy. He's like, yeah, he's definitely one of us, whatever. Then I ran into Andrew Breitbart. He introduced me to Greg Gutfeld. I started doing Red Eye,
Right.
and that's what started the relationship with Fox. And then eventually, it was great because Greg was being really good. Greg and Dana were both helping me. They were calling people saying, hey, use Tom on your show. He's great. And so I started doing other Fox shows. I started filling in for Greg on the 5. And then, as fate would have it, Roger Ailes' son was a huge Gaffigan fan.
Oh.
And so I said, hey, Greg, tell Roger, 2 tickets to the next show. So the whole Ailes family came to see Gaffigan. They came backstage. I did all my red state material for Roger while he was there. And now I'm in a big theater opening for Jim Gaffigan. There's 2,000 people in there, and I'm slaying them in the audience, because it's great. When you open for Jim, it's just the audience is ready to go. It's not a comedy club. Nobody's drunk. I just come out. I do my material. Roger's like, this guy's talented. And that's what got me Red Eye. Like I said to him shortly after that, hey, if Greg ever leaves Red Eye, I want a shot at that. And of course I got a shot at it, and I got Red Eye. So that started my Fox News career.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. And you're still on the 5. I saw you on the 5 like a week ago, something like that.
Yeah. I always say, I joke around that I'm a poor man's Gutfeld. And so, if he's ever absent, give me a call, even though I'm not really a poor man's Gutfeld. Some people think I got my own set of skills, so.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, great segue. So do you do any writing for Gutfeld, or you just do the bits?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I write all the Joe Biden bits.
Yeah.
I would describe Greg as having a laissez-faire production attitude because he's got a low-budget show. He only has a staff of about 8 or 9 people.
Yeah, I was shocked when I've been down there, like how all the cameras are just locked in place.
Yeah.
Robo, and there's like nobody on the floor.
Yeah, and it's, you can see, you probably, when you were in the audience, the guy who comes out to warm up the show is Gene, who
right.
does a lot of the sketches, and he's one of the writers on the show. Everybody is basically, it's not done like a normal late night show. It's staffed the way the way a cable news operation is, where they have an executive producer and then a bunch of producers. They're
Right.
kind of line producer, and then the other producers are writers. And if they worked on a news show, they'd be writing news items. But Greg finds originally, like on Red Eye, he found the funniest people he could in the building to work on the show. And then the on-camera people would help write the show as well. On Red Eye, we had, Andy Levy would write one story. I would write another story. Usually I'd write a monologue at the top. At the time, Joanne Nosachinsky was on the show. She would write another block. The producer would write another block. And then pretty much you have an A, B, C, D, E block, and you got a whole show. So Greg does the same thing. He's got guys like Gene writing the show. He's got a producer, Arash, who's like an executive producer type. Tommy O'Connor's like the head of the whole operation. And you probably hear his voice, like he does the a sexist would say, that's Tommy O'Connor. And he's been around since the Red Eye days. So everybody knows Greg's voice. Joe DeVito's on the show as a writer.
Joe's funny. I like Joe.
And Joe Mackey is on the show as a writer. And we got a couple of other writers. Other than that, it's a bare bones group. And I don't do any of the writing of the day-to-day scripts. I end up doing, I'll be a guest on the show. Mm-hmm. And then if we have a bit like a Joe Biden bit or a Adam Schiff bit, I'll just write that. Greg basically just says he'll write his script. And then at the end, he'll write, what do you say, Joe? And then the producer will call me and say, Greg wants a Joe Biden right here. I read Greg's script, and then I base the Joe Biden bit on that. I tape it on my phone. I send it in, and then Greg pops it on the show. And he doesn't even...
I think that's the charm of the current iteration of Gutfeld, is that it almost comes off as like a high-end public access show in a way.
Yeah.
You know, it's conversational, it's got low production value, and I think that's why it's become so huge, and it's just annihilating all the big corporate late night shows.
Yeah, because it's fun. It's like it's people, and the heart of the show isn't even we do bits. The other day, I was out in the street dressed up like $6 Million Man with Adam Schiff, and I had my
Love that.
my red tracksuit on. I went down to Foot Locker and bought the red tracksuit on a discount, and then I come out. I get one of the guys, Andre. He's one of the producers on the show, and we were out in the street just shooting that. And I'm running through the street, and everyone's looking at me like I'm a weirdo, which I guess I am. And the whole thing was like, I mean, the budget for that was what? I had to buy a tracksuit. I could probably get Greg to reimburse me, but I didn't. I feel I'll take the tracksuit home. So the whole thing is like homemade.
Right.
But there's something about it. It looks like it was homemade, like Tom Shillue running around like slow motion Adam Schiff. You can tell it was just an idea we had and we did it. And so people laugh at it, but they don't judge it like it's some kind of like, cinematic, masterpiece.
Masterpiece, right.
And, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes they'll shoot one of the bits. They'll say, let's go down in the conference room and we'll say like, we'll shoot the, politically correct board meeting, and they do it. And some of the jokes fall flat, and then it cuts to Greg and he's like, wow, that sucked. And then,
But that's what I think works, like, especially like the Friday bit where he reads jokes for the first time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're just bad, and sometimes they're actually really good, and you're shocked they didn't use them. But
yeah,
it's that whole, it's got that earthy feel to it, if that's even a proper term to use.
Yeah.
And
by the way, Greg he really does read those for the first time. He prefers to just come in and read them cold out of the teleprompter. I do not do that when I guest host. I lie and say, because Greg does it, so he keeps that intro in there, and I say, and just like Greg, I'm reading these for the first time. I'm a prep guy. Like, I like to prepare. So
right.
I sit down with Tommy O'Connor. I go through every joke. I rewrite them and get them. And then I go over them before the show. Cause like I do stand up. I like to be ready.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't want to bomb.
Yeah. I like to, I'm taking over the show for the day. I don't want to be like, so
Yeah.
I don't want to have that kind of wing it energy when I'm guest hosting. And so one night we were doing it and I said something like, they kind of like groaned at the joke. And I said, oh, you should have heard the earlier version, because the earlier version was worse, okay? Because it was probably written by Nick DiPaolo, who also faxes in jokes. That's a little known. He's kind of an uncredited
contributor.
Yeah, because Greg will send him his monologue, and Nick will give his thing. So if you see the really edgy jokes, oftentimes it's DiPaolo. But I said, oh, you should have heard the first version of that joke, and the audience laughed. And then someone said, hey, I thought this is the first time you're reading them. I said, what, are you kidding me? I said, Greg does it that way. I said, I'm not that kind of guy. I said, I like to rehearse.
Wasn't that 3 or 4 Fridays ago?
Yeah, but they were you at the show?
No, but like I said, I watch almost every day. So.
Yeah, but they cut out that comment about I rehearsed.
Did.
They cut it out because I think they didn't want. I think the producer didn't want to make it seem like Greg was lying about the thing, because I fessed up.
We all know he's lying.
I know.
So you really bought that red tracksuit at Foot Locker?
Yeah, it was.
When I first saw that, when you were doing that a couple weeks back, I thought like you went to a thrift store. I was like, that's great. It's like a 70s.
Yeah, I
suit.
know. Well, it's big now. Like they had cheaper ones, but there was Adidas. The Adidas ones were on sale, and Adidas they have that look of
that retro,
almost like Run DMC,
Totally.
And so I got those. They were a little more expensive. They were like $49.99 per separate, right? So it was like $100 for the tracksuit. And but I thought like, look, I'll just get that one. And it's funny because I took a picture of myself and I put it on the show, and I said, I put it on the internet, and I said, guess what we're doing tonight? And most people didn't know, but a number of people said $6 Million Man. Like they saw the red tracksuit and they knew what it was.
Which is, fun with your Mary Tyler Moore background, and
yeah,
there's a whole. It's sad we're aging out here. Like there's a whole bunch of people, a whole 2 generations probably, they have no idea who Lee Majors is, but I love that bit, the $16 million man. It's just too bad Congress dropped the ball on that whole thing. Ruined your joke.
I know. I know.
So you're not really an impressionist, though, right?
No.
Right.
And
so what gave you the idea to start doing, like, back 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was
doing Adam Schiff.
It was when Greg had the weekend show, and he basically was, Shillue, I want you to do Adam Schiff, because he saw Adam Schiff one time on like, in Congress, and it was like a long shot, and he looked and he's like, and he said to Dana, "Is that Tom Shillue?" And she laughed, and he's like, "Oh, we got to do something about that, right?" So he was like, "I want you to do Adam Schiff," and so Greg's idea was Adam Schiff reading nursery rhymes, and I had an idea that was Adam Schiff doing scenes from your favorite movies. So, so I was like, "You want to get lucky, punk? You want to get lucky?" And then I did one. Oh, you think I'm funny? Funny how? Funny ha ha. And like, so I did all those, and I thought they were great. And I sent them to Greg. And usually he just takes my idea and he does it. And he writes back and he's like, "I said nursery rhymes." And I said, "No, I thought it'd be funnier the movies." He's like, "No, you can do that one later." He says, "I want to do nursery rhymes." Like Greg had a vision of me saying like, peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, or whatever it was we did,
Right.
Little Jack Horner sat in the corner. And so he sat me on a stool and we did the nursery rhymes, and they were funny. And Greg was right. And I was like, "Greg, sometimes you're right." He had a good idea. And for the first one, it was definitely a better idea. And then since I had already taped the other ones, the next week we did the movie ones. But yeah, sometimes Greg has an idea and he's going to stick with it, So
Right.
we did that. We did Adam Schiff, and everyone went crazy for Adam Schiff. And then I started going, when Greg and I would go on the road, everyone they wanted me to do Adam Schiff. We would do selfies, and they wanted me to do the bug eyes with the
Bug
Adam
eyes.
Schiff. And so it was like the Adam Schiff was out of control. But I thought, oh my gosh, now I'm going to be known for Adam Schiff, because that's all I do now. Like Greg doesn't even have me on the panel. All he wants me to do is Adam Schiff. So I said, I got to get out of this Adam Schiff, wormhole I'm down here.
So you chose Biden?
Yeah. So I said, and Biden was now, I think, the nominee for the presidential, this was when he was running, and he
Right.
finally got it. I said, okay, I would love to give Biden a shot. And Greg was like, really? And I said, yeah. So I got, I didn't want to do all this hair and makeup. So I just took Snapchat and I did the Snapchat filter, old man, and I did it into my phone and I sent it to him, and he was like, "That's great. Let's use it tonight." So he pops it on the show, and it did great. And then he wanted it. Like when Greg wants something, he wants it every day. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what happened with the angry white male. I said, "Greg, I've got an idea. It's the angry white male, but he's not angry." And Greg was like, "I get it. Let's do it. Let's do it tonight." So he was like, he got the concept right away. And I said, it's going to be really like, angry white male. He's angry. He's white. He's male. Angry white male. And I said, we want like thrash metal music. And then it cuts to me, and I'm just like, building a birdhouse or something. Greg was like, "That's perfect." So we did it, and Greg loved it. And then a couple of people, I think that Greg, who that have Greg's ear, probably people like Scott Adams or whatever, they were like, "Greg, that bit is the best." And so it was like every night for like, months, we did angry white male, and we ran that bit into the ground. And then we got back to the Joe Biden, but yeah, I am not an impressionist. I love great impressionists. Of course, I grew up with Rich Little,
Yeah.
and then watching like on Saturday Night Live, the kind of technicians like Daryl Hammond, who could like do anybody so
Crazy,
accurately.
right? Yeah.
But who I always liked was Dana Carvey, who
Carvey was. Yep.
he's not an impressionist either. He's just a really funny guy. So when he does like, George Bush, not gonna do it, not gonna do it, like he's kind of doing this weird character.
Cartoony.
And so,
Very
yes,
cartoony. Yeah.
it's cartoony. So it's like a caricature. So that's my approach, because I'm not going to be a technician, but I like to get I like to get the face, like getting the face right, the facial expression and the essence of it, and then taking it to another place. Like Adam Schiff doesn't talk like this. He doesn't say, "Ooh, impeachment." It doesn't sound like him at all. But to me, it's like he should sound like that.
It's kind of funny because as you do that, you become Adam Schiff to me. Like
Right.
it's kind of funny. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's just it's in the eyes. Yeah, exactly.
And so there was like it's kind of trying to get some kind of essence. And when I first started doing Joe, it was not even close to him at all. I kind of, because, there's something about, and this goes to the Dana Carvey thing as well. It's funny when you can be punchy with an impression, but if you're doing someone who is very, Joe Biden kind of has a wandering, oh, what are we doing here? And he's soft, he has a soft quality. And every once in a while he gets, oh, give me a break. Get out of my face, man. So he does it, and it's soft, and it's not good for comedy doing that kind of softness and that kind of meandering thing. So when I started doing it, I would do this kind of like, it didn't sound like Joe Biden at all. It was kind of like, I got a friend named Corn Pop, and Corn Pop has a, whatever. It was almost like, it was this weird kind of like, just this kind of character that just talked funny. I was just trying to get laughs. So we would do the bit, and it would say Joe Biden, in the early segments, it was like Joe Biden on fast food. And then I'd be like, I like fast food. And then he would just make all these references. It was like, I was just trying to be silly and get laughs. And then as it went along, I started doing more of an impression because I'd be watching him. And then the impression changed. So it wasn't a bit about how, it wasn't about the writing of the bit. Now I kind of write these bits and I just kind of go off into I go off on a train of thought, and it sometimes kind of circles back around, or I try to be really, I try to think of a weird idea so that if he starts to talk about something and I go off in a different direction and it becomes a little bit bizarre, right? Greg likes those. He likes it when it's the more bizarre it is, the more Greg likes it. So it's turned into this thing where I do the impression of him. I do the meandering guy, and I try to do the soft voice, and I do the whisper, but I try to make it weird, to go off in a weird place.
Well, which is becoming more accurate daily.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Actually, right.
That's why people say like, oh boy, oh Tom, you must be easy to do, Joe. He gives you so many ideas, but I'm thinking, no, it's not easy. He's already doing I can't just do a guy who mixes up his words because he's already done it. So Greg just played a bit from Joe Biden. And so we just saw Joe Biden meandering and calling his wife his daughter and his daughter his wife, right? So I can't do that. He's already done it. So I've got to kind of think of a new thing to do. So
what's it like to be upstaged comedically by the president?
I know, that's the thing.
Right.
And that's why when he fell off his bike, they were like, oh, you're going to do something tonight about the bike? And I'm like, I got to wait. I can't just, because what am I going to do? Fall off the bike again? He just did it today. So I waited about a month. And then when nobody was expecting it, I was I'm riding the bike talking about something or other. And then I just rode my bike into a bush, So
yeah, remember that.
So it's kind of like, you got to kind of wait and, take advantage of it later.
That it's really, it's hilarious. It works. And I do like the fact that you do it on your phone and send it in. So it's in the vertical video, and it looks totally almost like he sent it in responding to something himself.
Yeah. Like he's in on the phone. And what that helps me do is I can just do it. And then there is no script. I kind of sometimes I write it out, little idea, but usually what I do is I make a pot of coffee and they send me the script. And I just kind of set up the phone and I say, no, give me a break, man. My wife's a doctor. Did I ever tell you that? And I just meander into the phone. And then when I make myself laugh, I'll be like, oh, that's good. I'll write that down, And then sometimes I'll do it and then I'll watch it back. And then I get a core idea of what I want to talk about. And then I will, say it's corn, like, oh, let's do corn pop for this one, And then so I'll say, when I was young, I had corn pop and a pony soldier or whatever. And then I kind of so I've got the concept, and then I just try to make it a little bit weirder. And then if I make myself laugh, I'm done. I send it in. And every once in a while, they're like, we changed the script. It's not about Hunter anymore. It's actually about the witch hunt or whatever. So then I've got to go back and do it again just so it matches,
Right. But you can always, I'm sure you can save old ones anyway, because it's this weird cycle of, the same topics keep coming back.
Oh, yeah.
It's just insane. So
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Just what do you got coming up?
We got I'm still doing live shows with Greg. So we just did Atlanta. We're going to be doing Providence soon, and
Yeah,
he's
that's
got the
my
book.
neck of the woods.
Oh yeah. Well,
I'm in
you're in
Connecticut,
Connecticut. Where in Connecticut are you?
right in the middle, dead
Yeah.
center, Berlin.
Oh yeah. So I have my own shows as well. I did a solo show called Spontaneous Combustion. I did it in December, or rather, I applied for it in December, and I did it this spring at the United Solo Fest. I ended up winning Best Solo Show at this festival, and I had an agent come to the show, and she liked it. It's about my parents. Both my parents have passed away, but I'm kind of telling stories about their life. So I kind of pick up where the Mean Dads for Better America left off, and now I'm doing this show about where I tell stories about my family, and I use artifacts that we found going through my parents' house.
Oh,
After the funeral, you got to go through the house and like, what are we keeping? What are we throwing away? I came
so it's
upon
kind of a prop comic thing.
yeah, I mean, it's there are props because my mother did a lot of artwork, so I used my mom's artwork in the show. But I happened upon a filing cabinet of my dad's writing, and some of his writing is so good. He wrote poetry and he wrote prose,
Oh wow.
and so I call it the treasure trove. It's like a treasure chest of my dad's writing that no one has ever gotten to see. And some of it's quite profound. And specifically, there is one letter that he wrote to the widow of a best friend in the 1980s. And I had never seen this letter before. And I read it in the show. And it's quite a remarkable piece of writing. So it's kind of fun to be able to bring this back to life. And I joke at the end of the show. I said, I don't think my dad would be comfortable with me doing this because he was a private man. And then I look up and I say, too late now, Dad. So
Is it kind of cathartic to do that?
I mean, it is. It's a fun show. It's basically my comedy. I mean, I'm telling stories about my life. That's what I've always done with my comedy. But then it is this is deeper than the stuff that I usually do. Because I'm talking about the old man, So there's a little bit of tears in it. There's a little bit of laughs, and so anyway, I think it's a good show. And then this agent has picked it up, and she's booking it around the country. So I'm going to be doing Greg shows, and then I'm going to be doing my own theater shows. I'm going to be playing some dates. I'm actually playing San Francisco on July 22nd.
Bring your
and
Kevlar.
then San Francisco. Can you believe that? I'm doing a 4:00 show. This is my new idea because that Fox News audience, they don't, they barely even stay up for Greg's show. They tell me I tape Greg's show and I watch it in the morning. They say, I want to be in bed by 9:00. So 4:00 shows. That's my new idea.
So that way you can get out of the town before it's dark too.
Yeah, exactly. This is San Francisco. You don't want to be out after dark.
No.
So 4 to 5:30, and then they can either go home or they can go to dinner and go home, but they'll be done. They'll be done before sunset. So July 22nd, I'll be in San Francisco, and then I've got some dates in Texas in the fall and October that aren't announced yet, but I'll be definitely doing Dallas and Houston. So that and Fox News, that's going to keep me busy. I mean, that's my plan, is to keep doing Fox, keep doing Greg's show, and use those things to promote my live shows, and and away we go.
That's pretty awesome. It sounds like your parents were very supportive of you too. I mean, you went to Emerson College for communications, right?
Yes.
They had to know you were probably going to be a struggling, starving artist like all of us.
Yeah. And they didn't, they never showed any stress about that. They were like, all right, it's like they had 5 kids. My brother went to Cornell, and then I went to Emerson, and then I dropped out of Emerson and went to UMass for a while. And then I went to Florida. So I never got a degree. And then I moved to New York and just, started waiting tables, just like breaking in. And they never once said, hey, do you think you need a backup or whatever? They just kind of were, I can't say they were supportive. Like, yeah, we want you to break into show business.
Right.
But they were very laid back.
They weren't go get a job. Right.
Yeah.
They didn't pull that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. They, there wasn't a lot of pressure. So, and I was not the youngest. I was the 4th of 5. So that happens a lot. Ask a comedian where they are in their family. They're usually one of the younger ones.
Right. Or the Jan Brady, the middle child.
Yeah, exactly. It's rarely the first in the family,
right.
They have to kind of prove themselves.
Right. Well, good luck in San Francisco. That used to be my favorite city, and now I won't go there.
Yeah,
I can't go there.
I haven't been in a while. I was at the San Francisco Sketch Fest a few years ago, and I heard it's even worse now. But like Greg just said today on the 5, he said that they were given so much. San Francisco, there's so many good things about it, and all they have to do is keep the place safe, and they just won't do it.
It's amazing. I mean, you see how many shopping stores have pulled out. I mean, the commerce is terrible. There's crime, drugs, you name it. Dave Rubin's been there a couple times recently, and he's taking videos on his phone, and I can't believe it. It's just, I mean, you see the Target there, put everything under glass.
Yeah,
it's just insane. So, yeah, be careful. So definitely send, a list of upcoming dates. I'll tack it on here at the end. We'll put it in the show notes and whatnot, and we'll promote you. And thanks for coming on, Tom. This was really, really cool.
Absolutely.
Really
and next time you say hello. Next time you come down to the show.
Definitely will. Definitely will.
All right.
Hope you enjoyed the interview with Tom Shillue. You can catch Tom in person with Greg Gutfeld on July 15th in Clearwater, Florida, July 16th in Fort Myers, Florida, July 29th in Providence, Rhode Island, September 16th in Reading, PA. Or catch Tom's solo show on July 22nd in San Francisco. Grab a copy of Tom's book, Mean Dads for a Better America, at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And you can follow Tom on tomshillue.com, Twitter, Locals, Facebook, and Instagram. Please smash that like button if so inclined. Leave a comment below. I'll pass it along to Tom. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We love each and every one of you to help us grow the channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching GeekTime TV. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, make sure to check the little bell icon anytime someone from our network drops new content here. Want some GeekTime swag? Check out the merchandise available in the GeekTime TV store, linked in the channel description below. Share GeekTime TV with friends, and as always, thank you for your support. We'll see you soon.